Immigration advocacy organizations, including FIL, have reported that ICE agents are actively conducting enforcement operations at the federal courthouse located in downtown Houston. Newly obtained footage shows visibly distressed family members emerging from the courthouse, tearfully informing bystanders and reporters that their relatives had been taken into custody by federal immigration authorities during what should have been routine court appearances. At a depth of 11 feet, the ground-penetrating radar made contact with something substantial, not bedrock, not buried pipe infrastructure. What the equipment had detected was a room, a deliberately constructed, reinforced concrete chamber equipped with ventilation shafts, and a door. The hinges on that door had been freshly oiled, recently maintained, and when investigators traced the precise location overhead, they found themselves standing directly beneath the private wine cellar belonging to a sitting federal district judge. Special Agent Dar Okonkwo removed her headset slowly, pressed the transmit button on her radio, and delivered 3 words to her team: "We've got it." But what awaited them on the other side of that concealed door didn't simply bring a 14-month investigation to its conclusion. What they found in that hidden chamber fundamentally rewrote the entire understanding of who had been sheltering and protecting the Sinaloa cartel's operations. Throughout southeast Texas, this discovery occurred at 3:47 in the morning on a Tuesday. To fully comprehend how investigators arrived at this moment, we have to travel back 14 months, back to the night when a seemingly unremarkable traffic stop inadvertently cracked open what would become the most elaborate and far-reaching judicial corruption case in the entire history of the state of Texas. Immigration advocates have noted that many of the individuals detained at federal courthouses are people who were attempting to navigate the legal system correctly, following proper procedures, only to find their cases dismissed or their presence used as an opportunity for enforcement, rather than adjudication. 11:23 p.m. Houston, Texas. A routine ICE surveillance unit operating along the Southeast Industrial Corridor flagged a convoy of 3 refrigerated semi-trucks moving in tight formation along the Port of Houston Access Road. The paperwork accompanying the vehicles, agricultural permits, and inspection seals, was falsified. More tellingly, the convoy was running 12 minutes ahead of its documented schedule, moving with a precision and confidence that suggested the road ahead had been deliberately cleared. It was as though someone with inside knowledge had smoothed the path before them. Within 48 hours of that initial intercept, DIA analysts stationed in Washington were staring at a data pattern that spanned 11 months, crossed 6 counties, and pointed unmistakably toward what they now believed was the most comprehensively protected Sinaloa cartel distribution corridor ever established on American soil. The numbers already assembled were deeply alarming. Investigators estimated that approximately 4.1 tons of narcotics had passed through this corridor, entirely undetected over that period. More than $60 million in cartel cash had been laundered through Houston's real estate market. And somewhere within the structure of the federal court system itself, someone had been methodically and quietly terminating warrants before they could be executed, dismissing cases before they could reach trial, and insulating cartel-connected properties from the asset seizure mechanisms that should have dismantled them. But there was a critical piece of the puzzle that nobody had yet uncovered. The encrypted files recovered from that first ICE interception contained a single folder within their directory. That folder bore one label, Blueprint. What the contents of that folder revealed would effectively paralyze federal command operations for the better part of 3 days, as investigators struggled to absorb the implications of what they were looking at. One of the confiscated burner phones retrieved during the initial intercept was registered to someone who possessed an active federal government email address. The identity of that person was unknown, and the convoy itself had received a warning, a tip transmitted 8 minutes before federal agents initiated their move. Someone with knowledge of the operation's timing had communicated that information to the cartel. The search for an internal source of leaks had just become the most urgent priority in the investigation. What federal agents uncovered within the first 10 minutes of that early morning operation is the reason this story demands your full attention, because nothing about what followed proceeds in the direction you would anticipate. 4:17 a.m., 6 locations, struck simultaneously. FBI breach teams cut through the pre-dawn Houston fog like shadows, moving with coordinated precision across Harris County and the Gulf Coast corridor. Flashbang grenades detonated, reinforced doors split from their frames. Agents in full tactical equipment poured into 6 target locations at the same moment, ensuring that no warning could travel from one site to the next. At a warehouse complex in the vicinity of Pasadena, DIA tactical units uncovered a distribution operation that had been functioning behind the facade of a legitimate cold storage facility. Industrial shelving units ran from floor to ceiling throughout the building. Behind those shelving units, investigators found 2.8 tons of cocaine, 1.1 million fentanyl pills, 14 kilograms of black tar heroin, and a quantity of methamphetamine sufficient to supply the entire city of Houston for a period of 6 months. Alongside the narcotics were 47 military-grade assault rifles, 12 rocket-propelled grenade launchers, and extensive body armor. It was that last detail, the body armor, that brought agents to a momentary stunned standstill. Stitched into the fabric of those protective vests were the markings of the Houston Police Department. At a luxury residential estate in Sugar Land, cartel logistics coordinators were already in the process of incinerating documents in an outdoor fire pit when ICE strike teams breached the perimeter of the property. 3 men sprinted toward a vehicle parked near the property's edge. 2 were intercepted before they reached the gate. The 3rd never made it to the driveway. In a converted auto repair shop located off Highway 90, agents encountered something that had not appeared on any pre-raid intelligence briefing and for which no member of the task force had been prepared. A server rack, military-grade encryption protocols, a hardwired network connection running to an IP address that appeared on no raid manifest and corresponded to no listed location. When analysts pulled the first accessible file from those servers, what populated their screens was a comprehensive collection of Border Patrol shift schedules. Authentic ones, current and active, color-coded and annotated according to which time windows presented the greatest vulnerability for detection-free smuggling. But what occupied the remainder of those encrypted drives was a question that hovered over every agent in that building. And it was the attempt to answer that question that caused this investigation to stop being a drug interdiction case and transform into something far more consequential and far more disturbing. Stay with me as this unfolds. 6 hours later, a temporary FBI Cyber Command field office had been established in downtown Houston, and analysts were working in rotating shifts around the clock. The encryption protecting those servers was immediately identifiable as something atypical. It had not been built by cartel technicians or by criminal organizations accustomed to operating in the shadows. It was government-grade encryption, the specific variety utilized by authorized federal contractors with security clearances. Breaking through even the outer layer of that encryption required 3 full hours of sustained effort from a specialized team. And when the first analyst finally penetrated that initial barrier and the data began loading onto her screen, she did not call out to her supervisor. She did not announce what she was seeing. She simply pushed her chair physically backward from the desk and raised the monitor in both hands without speaking, holding it up for her supervisor to read. What was visible on that screen was a complete financial architecture of remarkable sophistication. 14 shell companies operating under the legal cover of fictitious construction firms, a restaurant chain with multiple locations distributed across Southeast Texas, and 2 charitable foundations whose public-facing activities bore no relationship to their actual financial function. Every dollar that moved through these entities flowed in a single direction. The task force had given this operation a name, Iron Veil, and Iron Veil had just found its structural backbone. The money trail was methodical and deliberate in its construction. Funds originating from Sinaloa distribution cells moved through shell invoicing companies, were converted into what appeared on paper to be standard legal consulting fee payments, and were ultimately deposited into a private trust account. That trust account had a single authorized signatory. When investigators identified the name associated with that account, the room fell into complete and immediate silence. The Honorable Isabella Renee Mercer, a sitting federal district judge with 15 years of service on the bench, appointed through the proper constitutional process, confirmed by the Senate, trusted by the legal community, by her colleagues, by the litigants who appeared before her, and by the institutions she was sworn to uphold. In 2 years of federal law enforcement work, Senior Agent Marcus Tellis stated that he had never, not once, encountered the name of a sitting federal judge on a cartel payment ledger. His hands were visibly trembling as he typed the confirmation request and transmitted it to Washington. They had identified their insider. But the more pressing question, the one that nobody in that room had yet articulated aloud, was this. Judge Mercer was not the person who designed this system. The blueprint file made that unambiguously clear. She was a component within a larger mechanism, a critically important one, but a component nonetheless. Someone operating above her level of authority had conceived, engineered, and implemented this network. someone with military-level security clearance, someone whose name appeared nowhere in the financial records because they had never accepted payment in any traceable currency or through any identifiable channel. They had been compensated in something else entirely: influence, protection, power, the kind of currency that leaves no paper trail. Take a moment to consider that question carefully. What category of individual possesses the institutional authority to operate above a sitting federal judge? The answer was coming, and it was coming soon. 5:23 a.m., Joint Task Force Command Center, Houston Federal Building.